On today's episode of Gathering the Kings.
Every day we wake up, it's a privilege. We have 2 points of view. You can either look at it in a good light, or you can be negative about everything, and that's not going to get you anywhere. So I could have been growing up in Mexico. I could have not known what direction I wanted to go in life. Here, I have all the opportunities in the world.
What's up, everybody? I'm Chaz Wolfe, Gathering the Kings podcast. I am smiling ear to ear today because I have not just a guest, but a great friend at this point. My man, Armando Olvera. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Oh, man, I'm doing good. Trucking along right now.
How did I do with rolling the R's?
That was good. I like that. Really good.
You know, the uniqueness of having you here on the show is that we've gotten to know each other pretty well over the last three-quarter year or so. You've been part of the Gathering the Kings peer-to-peer mastermind group for a little bit. You have incredible energy. You do life with just a big old smile. That's why I'm smiling today, because we're going to have a great conversation. And on top of that, I know some things here about you and how you operate in your business. And so I'm going to be able to create some amazing value for the listeners as well. But Armando, tell us what kind of business that you have.
So I have a pretty niche company here in San Antonio. We do government contracting. So it's DoD contracting for all the military hospitals in the United States. And then we also do DoD contracting for commissaries on the military bases. So it's a niche. It's all government work. We don't do any commercial work. So on the hospitals, we provide doctors, nurses, TNAs. I mean, we go from the top to the bottom, anything that has to do with medical. So it's pretty intense. And like I said, it's all throughout the United States. There's civilian people going on to the military bases, and we staff them through NXGen Contracting Services, and they work on the military base. So they're civilians. They're not government employees. And then same thing on the commissaries. It's an interesting little world. I never knew much about it until about 3 years ago, and it's been a ride so far.
Yeah, I was just gonna, as you were saying that, I was reminded that you're in this, deep medical space. On top of that, government, related, and it's like, well, the last 3 years have been really interesting, with a pandemic and government regulation and shutdowns and all kinds of fun stuff, but yet medical, like two worlds collide, and it calls it your business.
Yeah, and it's crazy.
There's a lot that you've had to navigate.
Oh, so much navigation. It's all guidance, regulations that we got to meet, and never-ending security regulations we got to meet. Yeah, we're always having to stay up to date on everything.
It's interesting. I want to point something out for the listener, because this is what I know about you. I've already mentioned that you're just a really joyful person. And I think that you just kind of walk through life, with like an optimistic perspective. And so I want to get into some of that, because I think it's actually one of your superpowers. But when I think about what you just said, you're like, yeah, there's all this stuff that we got to figure out and all these regulations. And what you could have said is, yeah, there's all this stuff and regulations and rules and But that's not at all the tone that you gave to us. And so where do you think that comes from? Like, I want to press into the optimistic perspective that you carry in life, but just that tone, that joy, that like, yeah, it's part of it. And yeah, it's a lot. It's heavy, but we do it anyway. Where does that come from?
I think I've always been that way. Even in high school, going through sports, I always played sports all my life, but there was always challenges that we had to overcome as a team, as an individual. You always go into the weight room, you're lifting, you don't want to go in at 6 o'clock in the morning. And I always woke up happy to do it. It's a privilege for us to be able to do these kinds of things. Wake up in the morning, we come to work every day. Yeah. I'm not working for somebody. I'm doing it for myself. I wake up every morning, and every day we wake up, it's a privilege. And so I kind of always been that way. I think life is just that way. We have 2 points of view. You can either look at it in a good light, or you can be negative about everything, and that's not going to get you anywhere.
Yeah, you're right. It is pretty simple. It's binary. It's one or the other. What the word privilege is so interesting to me, because it's been used in a negative sense, I would say, in the last 5 years, of like, oh, you're privileged. But the way you used it is very similar to how I use it. I have a daily visualization, and some of the things that I talk about to myself every single day are that I have a privilege to, and then fill in the blank. One of them, which is to control my health. Health is it's a privilege to have great health. And so what I do inside of that is I get to work out, and I get to choose food that serves me. But the angle, similar to you, is I get to do this. Wow, what an opportunity. I'm thankful for this. I'm privileged. Why do you have that perspective on privilege as opposed to like it's, oh, you're privileged, you were given a silver spoon, or fill in the blank of a negative thought?
I think like I got that a lot from my parents. You know, they came from Mexico in the late 70s, being immigrants, you know, and first generation American here. I feel like I'm privileged. I could have been growing up in Mexico. I could have not known what direction I wanted to go in life. Here, I have all the opportunities in the world. You know, I mean, I'm working for the
Yeah.
government. I have a company that's truly striving right now. And my parents gave up everything for me to have these opportunities. So to see them struggle and go through life struggling, and you know, they're always coming out ahead, and it's giving me a leg up. I feel like for them doing that, so I take advantage of it. It's an opportunity that I get to have. I don't struggle, you know, so I'm grateful for that kind of thing.
Yeah, this mindset is just so strong, and you've come by it maybe more naturally based on your situations. What you're saying, like I grew up in a scenario where we didn't have anything anyway, so now that I have something, I'm grateful for it. What would you say to the person right now who maybe wasn't in your shoes, right? They grew up in maybe not even just in America, like as a with American parents per se, but not immigrants. They grew up in a house where they got plenty and there was no struggle whatsoever. That person listening right now is like, well, I don't know if I feel privileged, or maybe they were. How should they look at that?
I think we should always look at it as being having a great opportunity here. Because what if we lived in another country where you didn't get to go out and start your own business? You didn't get to go to just any school you wanted to. And living here, we have freedom. We have opportunities that other people don't have in other countries. So we got to embrace it and enjoy it.
Yeah.
We're lucky to have this.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% right, and I think that the person that I was kind of describing has either not seen the other side of the track, right? Or they've dismissed it so far down the line of what's possible, is that they now have an expectation of life as opposed to a gratefulness. And I think that's what makes, first generation Americans or first generation wealth builders, first generation business owners, like that's probably who's mostly listening right now, right? 85% of the world's wealth is first generation, right? Because we're freaking grateful for what we've got.
Yeah, we are, and we want to keep. We
How
want to keep it. We know what it's like to struggle. We know what it's like to be poor. You know, and we want to keep.
That's right. That's right. We ain't going back to that.
No, no, hopefully not. I mean, it could happen, but hopefully not.
What do you think, again, for this perspective of, okay, first generation, whether it's first generation American, first generation business owner, first generation wealth creator, how should this person be thinking so that way their children who aren't going to be like you and me can maybe have some of these same beliefs of like privilege and being grateful?
That's kind of tough. But you know what? I ran into a guy this weekend when I was in Alito. He sends his kids to Mexico for the summers, for them to grow up with the culture, to grow up with that perspective of what
Yeah,
it's
wow.
like to live in another country, and for them to come back here and not be so entitled and not have this this entitlement that we have here. And I thought that was a really great
Yeah.
perspective that he's given his kids. You know, and obviously not everybody's going to send their kids to Mexico or to another country to live with their grandparents, but to be able to do that, just to tell them and show them that, you know, even if you go take them around and see the homeless around here, around the cities and stuff, show them that not everything's, you know, peachy all the time. People are struggling here. And even so, more so now, people are really struggling right now. And so if the kids could see that
Yeah.
now, I think it might give them a different perspective to see what's really going on in the world. Because we put people in a bubble sometimes.
Yeah. When I was younger in high school, we built some homes in Juarez, Mexico. I don't think people are allowed to go to Juarez today and build homes.
Not so much.
I did that with my church group. I know, man. We were in there making it happen. And then I was also able to go to Haiti a couple times. And it's like, when you see how life is done different, to your exact point that you just made, I have a perspective on how things could be, but they're not. And so that turns me to gratefulness. And it's like, okay, wow, I had running water today. I chose to take a cold shower, but I could have taken a warm shower if I wanted to. And there was water. It came out when I told it to. It was crazy.
Right. Yeah. Think about the people that have to carry their water from the rivers to their house. They don't have running water. They don't have running plumbing. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. When we were building the houses in the summertime in Juarez, we got a bucket. It was a fairly small bucket, and you went behind a little curtain thing, and you used that bucket of water and you weren't going to get two. So use it wisely. So it's perspective, right? Like, I think that's what we're picking up here to give to the listener, is that if your perspective is different, then your attitude towards things changes. Would you agree with that?
I would agree with that 100%. And I think you can change your perspective. It's hard. You got to work on it. You got to build that
Yeah.
mindset of, if you were a negative person, just work on it every day, change a little bit here and there. Just like when we work out, we don't automatically get strong overnight. It takes time, but you can work on a mindset as well.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah. You individually working on the mindset, there's a self-mastery piece to that. And then, obviously we're both part of Gathering the Kings peer-to-peer. Even as the facilitator, the guy that started it, my perspective has changed by being around guys like you. And I'm sure that you felt the same way being around other folks in the group. But it's like, if someone else with different experiences, different history, they grew up differently, like you're talking about, they have a different business, they live in a different area of the world, they do life differently, they're going to be able to look in on my situation and give a totally different perspective, which helps me shift my thought. Would you agree?
Yeah, I agree. Even this morning we had an accountability call, and that shifted my perspective. I was tired, but man, after I left that call, I was energized. I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Today's a great day. Let's do this. Let's roll.
Yeah.
Being around people like that,
Yeah.
energize you.
That's right. Well, let's talk about your business for a half second here. And actually, maybe before we go practical, I want to go just like inside of Armando. Like, what's deep inside of you? Why are you doing government work? Why this line of work? Why are you even in business? Like, what's the deep-seated burning desire for you? What are you trying to get out of life?
I want to be able to give back, grow my company, but give back to the community. I've always been that way. Ever since I was a little kid, I remember being in Mexico and there was homeless people and my parents were like, oh, we got to go. And I had like a 2-liter Dr. Coke. And I was like, oh, here, you know what? I'm going to go give this to them because they don't have anything. But I've always been that way. I've always tried to help people. And I don't know where that comes from, honestly. It's just like, just do it, just to help people. Volunteered at an organization here in San Antonio. It was called CASA. It was for orphan kids, trying to help them. And they were bouncing around from house to house. I like the fact that I could guide them and help them out, even if it was just a little bit. And to be able to do that, I want to be able to grow this company to be able to give back to people like that. Get backpacks back, just help wherever I can. And that's honestly why I kind of want to grow this organization. I don't have kids right now. So for me, that would be my way of giving back, maybe contributing somewhat to this world.
Yeah, you've seen the impact, even on a small scale, of giving a soda to somebody who didn't have anything, not only for them, but for you. And it sounds like that's actually the addiction now. It's like, how can I help? How can I serve? Because it actually is a win-win. It feels great to serve.
It does, like I pretty much I feel like I have what I need. I'm pretty happy, but I feel better when I help somebody. Like that makes me feel better.
All right, Armando, obviously you got a big heart. I know that about you, just getting to know you over the last little bit of time as well. You got a big heart. You love people. You love being around people too. But for your business, I want to know about just a really good decision that you've made, practical, something that maybe the listeners can take away and go implement into their business as well.
Yeah, I think for me, really getting down and breaking down my KPIs. So like for every site that I have KPIs, because without KPIs, I'll go way over budget. My budgets get blown out of the water. With having KPIs and looking at those every morning, once a week, once every 2 weeks, I look at them every day though. And with KPIs, I know exactly where I'm at every day. And it truly helps me keep my budget in line. But then at the end of the day, I know where my profits and losses are just off of those KPIs. So
right.
It's really helpful.
Yeah. Now, I know your personality well. We do a personality assessment inside of Gathering the Kings, and so we joke about it, but I know that you're not a numbers guy at all. In fact, numbers couldn't be furthest from what you love.
Absolutely.
But inside of your best decision, you're talking about tracking numbers. How has someone like you, who's maybe not naturally a numbers person, you're much more of a people person and you love, the conversation and the relationship. How have you been able to dial into the importance of like not only like having numbers, tracking the numbers, and doing it repeatedly all the time and focusing on it?
Yeah, it's really been a mindset. Like when I come into work, that's the first thing I do. Like sitting there looking at them, analyzing them. But I have to do it because I've let my budget get blown out of the water because I haven't been tracking those. And so now that I've tracked those, it's truly brings everything back into perspective where I need it to be. And now I know, like, okay, every day,
Yeah.
this is where it's at, and this is where I'm profitable and where I'm losing money, or it helps me control my profits and loss completely every single day, and it has to be managed every day.
You've got obviously a large team. You've got people, working in bases all over the country. You have people that are then managing those people, and there's just a lot of moving pieces. Do the numbers help manage the moving pieces as well, or is it just about kind of tracking the margin?
No, it helps manage the people as well, because every site has their own budget. I mean, it can be variation from 1,000 hours to 2,000 hours depending on the site. So tracking those KPIs helps each manager at the site manage it. And then, like I said, I break it down to days so they know exactly, okay, this day we ran over 2 hours. We need to dial back to the next day, 2 hours to make sure they stay within their budget. But KPIs and numbers all across the board are going to help track, like whenever I want to give them a raise, when I want to give them a bonus, whenever they're not performing correctly. But it gives me numbers to show them. It's not my opinion. It's an actual fact when they're performing good and they're not performing good. I know my culture test, I can go off the field.
Yeah.
It's not going to be good. So
Exactly. I was going to say, give us more there, because I mean, what you said is the truth. Like we put the thing that's real in front of them, so that way we can just manage the deliverable. But there's obviously still a human on the other side of the table, or the other side of the Zoom if you're talking to them across the country. Because you're so good with people also, how have you been able to like bring these two things together where I know you see the other person, you care deeply for the other person. That's who you are. Like that's your design. But then now you've got this angle of like, well, here's the deliverable, here's the number, we got to hit it no matter what, no feelings. But yet you're this amazing person that has great feelings.
yeah, and that's really what helps me, is that I can take out the emotion of it and just be logical about it. The numbers are going to tell me exactly what it is, and I can't let my emotions be in there like, man, I really like you, I do, but these are the numbers, and they're not lying. We're not performing, or we are performing. And that's the beauty of numbers, is that they don't lie.
Yeah. My experience, tell me if this has been for you as well. My experience with folks that love people, that maybe even have a hard time with confrontation, that would maybe get their, feelings kind of in the way, their emotions in the way. This approach it actually makes it super practical, and it actually makes the person on their team they're talking with appreciate the clarity. Because a lot of times, my wife is like this as well, like where it's like, oh, I don't want to disappoint them, and I don't want to bring bad news, and I don't want to tell them that they're doing wrong. And it's like there's this people pleasing effect with people that are naturally good with people, like you. It's like the other person actually appreciates sometimes like just the clarity of like, hey, this isn't right. Let's fix it. In fact, I'll help you. Right?
Absolutely, yeah. And with the numbers, that's the best way to do it. And like I said, I'm so emotional sometimes that I could let that get in the way. But the numbers help me kind of have a boundary there for it.
Yeah. Yeah. And I guess so in that position for you, then you can still be the joyful, people loving person that you are outside of that. Like you can tell them how real it is and what the numbers are, and we got to hold the line. But yet we can still then have a great working relationship outside of that meeting to help them reach their goals, is what I'm understanding that you're saying. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Because then I can call them, I can be like, hey, look, your KPIs are perfect. You're hitting all your KPIs. Guess what? I'm going to give you a bonus for that. And they're, they're happy, they're excited.
Right.
But on the flip side, if they're not doing that, well, then I'm rounding them up or giving them a coaching. So it does help. Yeah.
Right. Well, let's flip the coin here, Armando. Talk about what decision that you've made that maybe wasn't the best that you've made, but kind of made a mess of things, and we can learn from it.
There was one big one I could really say. I had a previous company before this. I went into it with a friend of mine, a really good friend of mine, and we started doing medical logistics. And the mistake I made was not really knowing his business attributes. I just knew him as a friend, as a person, but I didn't know his business mindset. And so that kind of led us to eventually have conflict. We had to dissolve the company, and ultimately it ruined the friendship. I learned a lot from that. It sucks that the friendship got ruined, but I learned a lot from it, because going into it, well, one, I don't want business partners, but if I did ever have a business partner, I would make sure that we're on the same business wavelength. We have the same personalities as far as business is concerned, same core values, same business mindset, honestly, because that really, he didn't have the same business mentality, the same business goals that I had, where it was kind of just wing it. And then, oh, look, we're already making money, but we're good. He got content there, where I always want to grow. I'm always looking
Yeah.
for a way to grow.
Hey, kings and queens, Chaz Wolfe. I want to talk to you about something that's super important to me. We put a lot of time and effort, we meaning myself and my team, into this podcast, into the content that goes out every single day. And if you have been getting any sort of value or insight from this, we want it to be able to reach other business owners too. So we would love if you would like, comment, share, leave a review, post, share again, all of the things on social media, on all the different platforms, or even on the podcast mediums of Apple and Spotify. We would love to be able to get our content into more hands, more entrepreneurs, so they can grow their business as quick as possible. Together, we are building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs who are committed to growing their businesses to new heights. So let's do this. Let's help each other. Let's help each other grow. For the person that's listening right now who's like considering a partner, or they have a partner and maybe they're wondering if they're not on the same page, what were some of those red flags? You started itching on them a little bit there, as far as like he was content, you wanted growth. What did that look like in maybe a little bit more detail? Or what were some of the other red flags that you could see now that maybe you didn't see then?
The first thing is that we jumped in there without like really having bylaws and our structure of the company really set up correctly. So for one, make sure your bylaws are correct. And set your expectations. Setting your expectation of what you expect from the other person, and knowing their workload and your workload, who's gonna do what, is gonna be huge. But some of the red flags was I didn't really realize that his work ethic wasn't there to what I thought it should have been there or could have been there. You know, once he got to that where he was content, that was it. He really didn't want to pursue anymore. His management skills were a little different from mine. He was kind of harder on people. It was just there was a lot there, but I should have seen it, going in. But I only looked at it from a friendship point of view, not a business point of view.
It sounds like you guys would have made great friends being opposite.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's kind of what messed it up. Yeah. So, yeah, it was tough. I learned from it.
Yeah, that's obviously the healthy approach to, looking for what, what you can get out of it. And I appreciate you sharing. I think that there's a lot of partnerships that have worked, some that haven't. Obviously, that's a great example. The red flags were great. I appreciate you sharing those. What were some of the things that you could have done during that time to, I don't know, like find out what those red flags were sooner, or be able to recognize them? So you told us what they were, but how does the person now recognize them, that they don't have a great work ethic, or that we think differently when it comes to being content or keep going, or management styles being more rough or more soft? Like sometimes those can be complementary, but what you're saying is that they weren't. How does someone figure those things out maybe a little sooner, or maybe even before they get started?
I think right now, honestly, doing a culture test, that has helped me just figure out myself a little bit better, knowing which things I already knew, but knowing it kind of puts it into perspective for me. Like not knowing that I wasn't organized. I already knew that, but when I saw it on a piece of paper, I was like, holy shit, I'm not organized. And I know that. I'm like, okay, if I bring somebody in, then somebody's going to be organized, that can do that, and for me, it's like, it just put it into perspective, just kind of showed me something I already knew, but just blew it up.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And to your point, Culture Index has been not only great for just, guys like me and you to be able to go back and forth and communicate, but inside of a business, oh my goodness. If I know that, like what Armando is saying is that I have a tendency to do X, Y, and Z, well, Armando doesn't need another, what his profile is called as a rainmaker. He doesn't need another rainmaker, because then they're going to, they're another visionary, another person that's going to just go talk to everybody, implement no systems and process, and cross no T's and dot no I's. Obviously, you're doing those things because you have to in order to be successful. You wouldn't have a multi-seven-figure organization like you do and be successful if you weren't doing those things. But naturally, you would rather just kind of, be a little bit more free-flowing. And so to find that person that can complement that is not only fantastic, but what I'm hearing you say is that you can find that's good, but like be aware of how that matches up in business, not just in friendship.
Right. Absolutely. Because in friendship, it can work out, but in business, it's not going to work out so well.
Yeah. Not if you're not in alignment. I think alignment's the right word, because you can be complementary in characteristic traits, but completely not aligned in targets, goals, where we want this thing to go. One guy might want to sell in 3 years. The other guy wants to hold on to it, give it to his grandkids. That's not going to work unless the guy in 3 years that wants to sell it to the other guy.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. That would work. Yeah.
It could work, maybe not. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, so let's talk about a couple things here. You're hungry. That's what I'm picking up. You love growth. You love always looking for the next challenge. Let's talk about you going through the pandemic in the medical space. Just give us just, I don't know, what was the hardest thing in all that? What was the challenge? What was the growth for you personally and or organization wise? I mean, it's just such a unique piece. We all went through it, but you went through it in the medical space. And so I just think that there's clearly something that we'll be able to pull out here for the listener.
That going through it in the medical space was it was a roller coaster because nurses were jumping ship. I mean, they were getting traveling for them. They were getting paid good money for that. And then to keep them on a military base was like even harder because they had to go get vaccines. They had to go through all these regulations. Honestly, it was a matter of us having a good culture, understanding that once we got through this pandemic, we were going to take care of them. And we didn't lose as many nurses as we could have, but we did lose some, obviously, because the pay was there's no way you could have matched that during the pandemic. But we were able to keep a lot of them. And now we take care of them. Now that the prices are going back down for traveling nurses, those nurses stayed the same. They got their vacation packages that they earn. We take care of them. And man, that was a hard time. I mean, every morning we're like, oh, how many resignations do we get? Or, who's putting in their notice? And it's like, and then we're trying to recruit.
Wow.
And recruiting for that was a nightmare during that time because you were competing with the
I'm sure.
commercial, the public. It was
So I'm hearing grit, I'm hearing perseverance, but really underneath all that, I heard you see people, take good care of them, go with them on the long haul, do what you say you're going to do when you say you're going to take care of them, how you're going to take care of them, actually do it. Is that is that the message here?
You got to follow through. I think a lot of times, I worked with other companies before and they didn't follow through. They tell you what they're going to do and then they don't follow through. I like to follow through. That's one thing. One of my core values is always staying honest with my team, staying honest with my employees, and just always trying to be there to support them. Honestly, we know they're going to go through tough times, and there's times that they're going to call in sick, and that's part of it. But them supporting me through it too, and I understand that it's I got to support them at the same time.
Yeah, it's really a partnership or a dance. Actually, maybe is a better way to say it. There's a give and a take. There has to be two working with each other in order for feet not to get stepped on and one person not to do all the work, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
What do you think? I mean, kind of staying on this growth trajectory. Let's talk masterminds for a second. For a long time, I asked every single guest what they thought about masterminds. Obviously, you've been part of my mastermind, the peer-to-peer group for Gathering the Kings. What was your thought before joining, and what's been the effect of such of a group since?
Oh man, this is a really good question because when I joined, I wasn't really sure what to expect out of it. I kind of had an idea of what I wanted out of it, but I wasn't sure what I was going to get out of it. You know what I'm saying there? So when I joined, I was like, oh, I'm just going to get to talk to people that are going to be like-minded. But hopefully it's just kind of going to be more like me just getting out whatever I'm feeling that day. But I get so much out of it, like talking with the other kings and queens. It's been an amazing journey, but to see that other people have the same ambition, the same growth, but also the same struggles. That was a side that I wasn't expecting to see, that people were struggling the same way that I was. And then to have that community where we could all talk and share, how we pull ourselves out of, ruts and struggling with employees or struggling with anything that's going on. I mean, you could with family, with your own emotional thoughts and your own emotional day-to-day feelings. And it's been really good to have kings and queens that feel the same way. They go through the same battles. And then at the end of the day, it's been great to have people that truly support your success while you're going through this with them.
Life-changing, life-giving. I always prep every guest here for you, the audience, around, I want to transfer courage. And so every single guest, I say, I want to transfer courage. We're going to tell your story. And as Armando, you were just talking there for a second, I felt like that's exactly what was happening when you got around other players. Obviously, it's people that I've, organized into a room. So there's been some strategic thought about who's there, but you're right. Whether it's a win or a loss, and we're discussing, and you get to see someone who maybe online looks like they have it all together. And look, there's a lot of things that a lot of those folks have going well for them. They're not small business owners. They're not fumbling around on a lot of things, but some things they are. And when you see that, you're like, oh, They're just a regular person and they have struggles or they have difficulties or they're dealing with a employee situation. And what it actually does is it transfers courage. Well, if he can do it, I can do it. If she can overcome that, then I can overcome that. Would you agree with that?
Oh, 100%. I think like sometimes whenever I'm talking to, within our group and somebody's struggling, I'm like, man, I've been struggling there too. And then everybody else chimes in and says what they did to overcome it. It's like, oh man, why didn't I think of that? That was such an easy solution.
Right.
And it's just amazing to come through with that. I look at it a lot of times, it's like when I play golf. When I play golf with somebody that's not such a good golfer, I don't play as good. But when I play golf with somebody that excels in golf, it ups my game tremendously. Yeah. Like I can shoot a lot better. And I look at it that same way with business.
Yeah, exactly. It happens in every single facet. It happens for your employees, your team members. When you put two A players next to each other, they're going to win better. That's not like real English, I guess, but they're going to push each other, right?
Yeah. And I've seen it, I think being around the kings and queens has made me want to strive more. It made me want to grow faster. Made me want to go harder. Instead of waking up at 8 a.m., I wake up at 5 a.m. just to make sure I hit the gym every day. It's things like that. It just works. Being around everybody.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to be in a room of people that are winning, but eventually what you realize is that, well, dang, if I'm going to be here, I might as well be winning myself rather than just watching other people win. And it doesn't mean that people that come into a group setting have to always be broken and not winning. We've got people that join, whether it be Gathering the Kings or I'm sure there's plenty of other groups to choose from, but you join a group and you can already be winning, but you step into a room of high players. I'm just telling you right now, the energy is different and you walk away, even if you're winning, you walk away winning at a greater intensity because that's how I feel. I'm the one that was like, dude, I gotta create this thing because I couldn't find something that was what I had envisioned. And so I'm starting putting players like Armando in a room where it's like, for like, you guys don't even realize what he was just talking about. Like 3 years of pandemic medical stuff, like nurses were in demand more than food in some instances. Like, oh my gosh, everybody's dying of COVID and everybody needs to be in the hospital, right? And I'm not trying to overplay such a terrible time, but what I'm trying to say is that what Armando dealt with during that time is probably heavier than what you've had to deal with in your business, or as heavy as some of maybe you bigger guys have had some experience. Like this guy's a freaking king. And so it's like, dude, I need to get around a guy like you who's made it through a situation like that because I need to know how you think. I need your thoughts to agitate my thoughts. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And, I've been around other organizations as well, like DEO, and I just feel like being in the Kings, it's more intimate. It's more people actually open up and we're just all kind of there to support each other. It's really a community and a community that gives back. Yeah. Everybody in our organization gives back.
All right, Armando, I appreciate all those kind words. The listener has heard me talk about Gathering the Kings many, many times, especially if they've, been listening to this show repeatedly. But I appreciate the insights from somebody truly on the inside experiencing what we're putting together. I got one last question here for you, brother. I want to know, I know that you're a young guy, so don't take this the wrong way, but I want to know if you had a chance to whisper in your younger ear. Young Armando, you tap him on the shoulder, you whisper in his ear. What do you tell that guy?
I would tell him, don't be scared. Take those risks. Because there was a time where everybody was like, oh, no, you can't do that. You can't do that. And I would listen. But, man, you just got to take the risk. I waited until I was 35 to finally take a big risk and just put all my eggs in one basket and go for it and grow a company. I always kind of played it safe. Don't do that. Just take the risk. You're going to fail. That's fine. But at least you're taking the risk.
Yeah. Nothing to hold on to. Just put it all out there.
I mean, if we all don't take a risk, then we have nothing to gain. So you might as well just go for it.
Yeah. It's good stuff, man. You've got a heart of gold, really is what it is. And I hope that some of these listeners want to reach out to you and just get to know you. How can they find you? A, if they're an entrepreneur, they just want to connect with you. Or B, maybe they are in some sort of government contracting space and they might be able to use your services or maybe collaborate with you somehow. How can they find you?
Yeah, they can find me on my website, www.nxgencontracting.com, or on Facebook, Armando Olvera, or on Instagram, Mondo_NextGen. And or they can email me and they can get the email off my webpage.
Perfect. Well, we'll put all that in the show notes as well. I'm not only excited to have shared you with the audience, but I get to look forward to seeing you in person here just in a couple of weeks. We've got our trip coming up to Utah. We're going to be running UTVs in the sand dunes and doing the community thing that you mentioned earlier and supporting each other in the business. So I appreciate you, man. Thanks for being here. Blessings on all of the contracts that you're serving, all the people that you're influencing through your kingship. Thanks for being here, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for listening to Gathering the Kings today. I hope that you were able to pull out a few nuggets to go apply into your business right away. More importantly, though, I hope that you're realizing that it takes more to be successful than just being by yourself, doing it all on your own, carrying the weight all by yourself. What I have realized, not only in my own journey from multiple businesses and multiple different industries, and now interviewing over 200 or 300 other very successful 7, 8, and 9-figure business owners, is that it's tough to do it alone. And so Gathering the Kings exists to bring together successful entrepreneurs. In fact, we are putting together 1,000 kings, specifically who are grateful but not done. We're intentionally assembling kings who fight tooth and nail for their business, family, and communities. And here's what we believe, that in the pursuit of excellence in those areas, that it ignites within us the responsibility to govern power and forge a lasting legacy. So if that relates and resonates with you, and you know that you need people around you, sharp, qualified, other very successful business owners, I want you to go to gatheringthekings.com. I want you to take a look at what we're doing and see if it makes sense for you to be part of our pursuit to 1,000 kings. Talk soon.